One, two. Are we on? Good to go? Okay. Okay, welcome again to our fourth and final session. Camera going? Good? Okay, fantastic. Our fourth and final session, and I'm just going to again start with the recap of just where we've come from and where we're going to. And tonight really is about just wrapping all of this up. So it's about taking the last sort of 3 weeks with tonight's sessions and just putting it all together that hopefully at the end of all of this, we're a little bit better equipped, we can manage things a little bit better, and we're all going to become wealthy after this. So just to go to the beginning, we kind of in the beginning just had a look at the importance of us understanding our money, where it comes from, what we're doing with that money on a monthly basis, and managing that through a budget and a process. So planning around the finances that we're given and managing that money in the best way possible. Once we've done that, we can start then sort of allocating money towards these emergency funds, these rainy day things. And it's advisable always to have money stored away somewhere for the day that you're going to need it. Then we had a look at our money personalities and the parts that sort of drive the decisions that we make around money and what has sort of influenced those things. Why do we behave in a certain way with our money? We had a look at the family dynamics and at home and raising children to become better equipped in the future with their finances. And then last week we had a look at tax, and it's pretty much like the topic that we're going to have a look at today, which is death. Unfortunately, those are the two things that everybody's going to have to face. We all have to pay taxes, and it's a reality of things. And then we had a look at wealth creation and retirement, and that the sooner you start that, and it goes back to our budgeting, the sooner you get that right, the quicker you're able to start building wealth and start getting things right for your future. So tonight is just really, as like I said, it's bringing all of that together, and everything that we do around finances is based on planning. And if we get our planning right, it's a roadmap. If we can get that right, it's like any journey that you take. If the plan works, if the road that you're traveling on, and not East London roads, but hopefully we find roads without potholes, if that road allows you to take the direction that you want to go on, it's always going to be a more enjoyable ride. It's going to get you to your destination. It's probably going to be a quicker way to get there than having to detour all the time. So you're to start somewhere, and that somewhere usually is starting and knowing what you're doing with your money right in the beginning. We have to plan ahead. So even Noah, if you think about it, when Noah had to build the ark, there wasn't rain yet. But you've got to plan for those days to come. Those events are going to happen in our life, and we need to plan and make provision for that sort of thing. And the stuff, unfortunately, I want to talk about tonight is the stuff that we hate. It's the grudge stuff that we have to pay for and manage, and nobody likes that kind of stuff. And my sort of analogy always when I share it with people is there's two things that are going to happen in your life. One is you're going to live a healthy life, and you're going to go through life without any ailments or illnesses or injuries. You're going to be fortunate enough to work a good long career, and you're going to get to a point that you're going to be able to stop working and then enjoy a retirement sort of period. And if I were to say to you, if I could guarantee that to you, how much money of your salary would you put towards that? If I could say to you, put a number on the amount that you would be willing of your salary to put away or throw away, if I could guarantee you 80 years old with no illnesses, no ailments, what would you put on that? What price would you put towards that? The alternative is something is going to happen to you. You're not going to get to 80, or something is going to happen to the point where you might get to 80, but you might be ill. You might have an accident that leaves you incapacitated. Something could go wrong. One of those things is going to happen. And you've got to decide what is the value of that to you. Because that's the thing is going to drive this thing. And so when people say, I spend so much money on all this stuff, I'm going, you know what, if you get to 80 and you've spent all that money, wasn't it worth it? That's how I view it. I view it as, I lived things, then I've surely had a good life. And if something were to go wrong, at least I know that's the place and that's why I was spending the money. And that's kind of the way we need to have a look at a lot of these things. Is it's a value that you place on something potentially going wrong. And if it doesn't, then you must go, thank goodness I had a good life. And I'm going to start with our will because personally I think this is the most important place to start. I think before you actually do anything, before you even get your budget right, I think this should be a starting point for any person. When you leave school and you I want to say even before you've got a job, it's not a bad idea to have, because as soon as you actually have a bank account and you've got money in an account, if something happens to you, something has to happen to that money. There needs to be an instruction that needs to be actioned and carried out. And so your will is always your starting point before you even do anything else. And if you don't have one, if you're listening to this tonight, if you don't have one, I'm going to encourage you to get it sorted out as quickly as you can, because we don't know if we are going to get to 80. The day could come at any stage, and you don't, and I'm going to go through it later, the importance of you don't want to leave problems behind because it just creates a bigger problem for your family. So I'm going to come back to this one, but I wanted to start with this because I think it should be the starting point for anybody who has left school and is kind of going into a career. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Our next step should always be taking care of just your health. If something were to go wrong with you, medical care and just your ability to work, because that's the thing essentially that's going to allow you to carry on living. Before you even get married, before you can do anything, if you're single and you're working and you're earning money and you are financially dependent on yourself, and something were to happen to you, what then? What then if you cannot earn that money ever again? Who is going to take care of you? So when we do planning, we always start here. So the will is our starting point. The second point is to go, if you get sick, what's going to happen? What is your plan? What is your solution? And all of the things I'm going to chat about tonight it's not for everybody. Remember, right in the beginning, I said to you, everybody's plan is different and it's unique. And so the person next to you has got a completely different plan to you, and the person behind you, people sitting at home, everyone's plan is unique. And because your friend does something doesn't mean you have to do it. It's got to be your plan. It's got to fit your circumstances, and it's got to kind of meet your needs. And those needs are different for every person. So that's always then our second point is go, if you're sick, what are you going to do about it? Do you have the finances to cover those costs? And again, it's one of those things when we make these payments towards medical aids and hospital plans and we don't like it because you spend money and you always go like, nothing's happened. I don't ever get the value of this. And going like, aren't you lucky? Aren't you lucky that you haven't had a bypass surgery? Aren't you lucky that you weren't diagnosed with cancer? Aren't you lucky that you haven't been in a massive car accident and now you're lying in ICU? Aren't you lucky? And we sometimes just have to remember that as well, that it's there for those events. And if those events are not happening to you, you've got to almost be grateful that they haven't happened. And again, it comes back, if that's the money that I have to throw away to not have that happen, I'll double that money if I have to, if somebody can guarantee me a good, healthy life. So it's our perspective of how we have a look at these things. Our second thing then we need to look at, and that's the one I'll go back to the beginning, we have to have this emergency fund, this rainy day stashed away money that if something goes wrong, and we've come through a period after COVID where it happened a lot, and unfortunately I'm in the situation where I see it, where people have been retrenched, they've lost their jobs, unfortunately. And if you don't have that, and so that becomes our next step with a young person who comes to see us. Before you even do all the other stuff, start that. Start putting that in place. And once you've got that, then you've got it. It's there. Don't touch it. Leave it. Look after you in the future. Our next step, things that we buy. What are you doing about those things? And there again, people will say, I don't believe in that kind of stuff. I'm going to take my chances. But again, you've got to weigh it up and you've got to go, that's fine for the person next to you, but for you, are you in a financial position to be able to take that chance? If you've got a car and you don't insure it and somebody writes your car off in an accident, so it's not always your fault. An accident's not always your fault. Sometimes somebody else, and they write your car off. How is that going to affect your life? Are you going to be able to get to work? Are you going to be able to make a plan? And if you can't make a plan, and then it's going to affect other parts of your life, because now if you're getting to work late because you don't have lifts, potential loss of job, the knock-on effect of something because of a decision you made earlier can be massive. It kind of blows out of proportion eventually. So protect the assets that are valuable to you. Have a look at those things which potentially could leave you in financial difficulty if you don't look after them. Again, you see it all the time. So unfortunately, from my side, it's easy to talk about it. But you see the mistakes people make because of 300 Rand or 400 Rand. They're just not willing to pay towards looking after something. A house that burns down, out insurance. That's a massive problem for a family to now have to find an alternative solution. Make sure that you're doing the right things, protecting the assets that are important to you. The things, I give a perfect example. A cell phone to a lot of people doesn't matter. If it's taken, if it's stolen, it's irrelevant. It's not going to change their lives. And so there I say to people, honestly, if it's not going to affect your life, then don't spend the money on insuring. If you're willing to go and find a cheap cell phone to replace it, take the risk if that is your concern and it's about spending money. But if your car is written off, it's a very different story to a cell phone being lost. Well, I've got a nice pair of earrings. Should I insure them? If you lose them, is it going to affect your life in any way? Be a bit sad about it because maybe there's sentimental value to you. But you've got to weigh that up. Is it worth spending 150 Rand to insure those earrings because they were given to you from your granny or your mom? You'll never replace the sentimental value of it anyway. So you've got to weigh those sorts of things up. So there's things that are important to insure and they're going to affect your life if that happens. There's other things you can say, you know what, it's just something that if it's not there anymore, it's not going to have an impact other than I've lost it and I'm sad about it. Our next one are our liabilities in our family care. And these are the things, again, as we grow up, we start taking on those assets that we've acquired, so the properties and the cars. And as soon as we do that, very few of us are in a financial position to pay cash for these things. And so who do we go to? We go to lending institutions and we ask for money to be able to buy the house or buy the car. And as soon as we do that, those places want to make sure that they're going to get their money back from you. They don't want to take the risk to say, yes, take the money, and if something happens to you, you're not going to be able to pay that back. And so covering your liabilities, covering those things which potentially are a risk to somebody else is important. Again, you don't want to, going back to the will, you don't want to leave a problem for somebody else. And so ensuring that if you've got debt, if you've got anything where you are owing somebody else, it's important for you and for your family that you make sure that those things are covered. So your liabilities and your family care becomes the next step. And so a lot of young people come into our offices, and this is almost where they want to start. They want to take, and I'm going, whoa, 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 what is your debt? What is your risk to your family? And they go, no, I don't have any. There's no family, there's no debt. And then this is not your most important part of your journey. You need to go to the parts that are important. And so it's about understanding what you are, what you need, and where your plan fits in. But taking care of the family is about making sure your family are better off if you are not able to be there to provide for them. Wealth creation. And so once we've kind of ticked a lot of these boxes, we get to this point where we now need to focus on this thing to go, if I'm fortunate, if I get through all these years and I get to this stage, can I then carry on with the enjoyment of life? Am I going to do the things right so that when I get to the 60 or the 65, whenever it is that you want to stop working and look at and just enjoying your retirement, am I doing enough? And the quicker you start that as part of your plan, the more you're going to enjoy those retirement years. And so that comes towards the end of your plan. And again, it's one of those questions that often come up, Sheldon. I'm 21. If I start with this one, isn't that the safest? Because then I'll have time to build so much. The risk is, again, if you know your end date, it's easy. And you can say, Sheldon, I'm going to live till 75. Then I'm going to say to you, brilliant, let's create wealth. Because you've given me a guarantee that nothing will happen to you. But we don't know that path. We don't know that journey and what potentially could happen along the way. And so it's important that we make sure that we try and cover as many bases along the way. So if we go back to that map, if you drive in from here to Port Elizabeth, you kind of know you could, on one tank of petrol, get to P and you're going to be fine. If you've got a plan to get from here to Cape Town, you kind of need to already start making your plans for the things that are going to happen. I'm going to run out of petrol. I'm going to get hungry. I might get tired and I might need some coffee or something to keep me going. So plan and your journey changes based on what the end outcome needs to be. And so that sort of plan that we've gone through is very much like that. You need to make sure I want to get to Cape Town, and along the way I'm going to have to do certain things. And we go back to the will. And so this is kind of what's going to be the wrapping up of the last 4 weeks, is because I think this is the thing that is the most important aspect of everybody's plan. And it's a simple thing, but it can become so complicated when we don't do it. It's the one piece of paper that I believe is probably the most important piece of paper that you'll ever sign, because it's the thing that can speak for you when you can't. And people don't always realize that, is that, again, sitting in my position, I sit with families when we do this, and they'll say to me, Sheldon, our family is fantastic. Like, we won't have any problems. We don't need to discuss this kind of stuff. Let's just do it like that. And that same family, 3 years down the line, when fathers passed away, are fighting over the money that they thought they should have got. And now the one sister's getting more than the other sister, or they feel it's unfair because the brother got the car and they didn't get the vehicle. If this thing is not done properly, it just creates a mess for everybody afterwards. So the tightest families, the most loving families, when it comes to this and money, unfortunately, those families often can separate as a result of this piece of paper. Okay, and so what I've done is I've taken 4 sort of questions that often come up when I sit with people, and I'm just going to address them quickly because I'm sure they're questions you've probably sometimes thought about. And the first one is, what happens if I die without a will? Then what? It can be sorted out. It's not the end of the world. The problem with it is your instructions, your wishes are not going to be your wishes. And so what happens is an executor needs to be appointed. So again, you don't have a choice over that. Somebody will be appointed on your behalf. It's that person's job then to decide what they think should have happened with your estate and your finances. And they might make decisions that you would not like. They might give money or properties or vehicles to people which was never your intention. But that's all that's going to happen because you haven't left any other instructions. So people who should not inherit may inherit, and people who should inherit might not inherit because there's no instruction as to what needs to happen now. So we dealt with an estate from somebody who came to see us. This was a couple of years ago. It had been going on for 4 years because the father figure had passed away without any instruction. And so in the family, they had been fighting over who was getting what for 4 years. That can't do any good to any family when we leave that kind of a mess. Something quite simple could have been sorted out by having a will in place, which would have eradicated all the fighting that happened afterwards. Do I need a will if I'm single with no children? I've mentioned this already. Yes, you do. As soon as you have something, it's advisable to have the will because an instruction needs to be carried out. So your 300 Rand in your bank account, if you're no longer a minor, you can decide who that money goes to. And the easiest thing for your parents is that it's just done. There's a piece of paper that instructs the executor to do X, Y, and Z with whatever's there. And you don't know when the day comes. So the quicker you do that to say, everything that I have must be left to my mom or my dad or whatever it is, it won't be long before you've purchased the car and then you forget to do this. And now you do have something because you've got money in the bank, you've got a vehicle, at least you've got an instruction as to what needs to happen. And so it's important, as soon as you're kind of no longer a minor, it's always advisable just to do it. It's a piece of paper that you need to sign with an instruction. You hope you don't have to use it for many years. But if the day were unfortunate to have to come, at least you know your parents will be able to sort it out. If you are single and you've got children, well, that's another whole argument. There are so many single people that we meet with who don't have a will, and they don't realize the ramifications of not having a will. If there's not another legal guardian, in other words, if the other partner is not on the scene, if they've maybe passed away or something has happened and there are minor children, those children belong to the state until they can sort out what needs to happen. If you are a single parent with minor children, I urge you, please, if you're listening, get a will drafted as quickly as you can, because if something happens, you don't want the state to decide who's going to take that child. Because again, they don't know your family members. And so that child may land up with a family member which was never your intention, somebody that you didn't want to raise your child. But the state might decide that that is the best person based on finances, where they live, or whatever it is. So if you're a single parent and there's not another parent on the scene or involved, I urge you, get that done. That's probably the most important thing you're ever going to do in your life, is just protect your minor children. Give the instruction as to who needs to take that child. Does my debt go away when I die? So a lot of people think that's fantastic. If I die, then we just bury everything with me. We just stick it in the ground. It doesn't. Your estate is going to become liable for that. And anything in your estate, whatever your instruction was, has to first take care of this, because the people that you owe money to want their money. And so they need to get that money. If that means that your house has to be sold or the car has to be sold, which you've allocated to one of your children, the debt has to be settled somehow. So make sure, again, in your planning, that these kinds of things are taken care of, because you don't want to land up in that situation where you've kind of created this wealth, but because you've left a mess, all that wealth is just going to be handed out, and then the people that thought they were getting stuff no longer get anything. So your debt is not going to die with you. Somebody's going to become responsible for that. The other thing I do want to warn people, don't just stand surety for somebody else. There's a lot of people that happily sign surety for a friend or another family member without realizing the implications of that. If you understand surety for somebody, understand that whatever that is, that debt, you could be liable for that. There's too many people trying to help people out and just signing surety because they're like, no, I trust them. It'll be fine. I know them. If things go wrong, you become part of the problem, and you are going to have to help solve that issue. So before you sign anything, I again urge you, first go and get assistance and help. Don't just go, well, I know this person, I'm signing, I'm going to accept whatever it is. They said to me it'll be fine. They said it's not going to be a problem, then it'll be fine. Beware of those sorts of things. Too many people happily sign away things. And then I did a will many years ago. Is it still going to be a go? It might be valid, it might be fine. Remember, as your circumstances change, it's advisable to update. As soon as things happen in your life, it's always worth going back and just checking it. And even if it's fine, there's no harm in just for you reminding yourself. Again, we'll have people come into our office. Have you got a will? Yes, I have got it. Do you want to have it looked at? Yeah, that's a great idea. I don't know where it is. It was done 20 years ago. No idea whether that will is up to date, whether it's going to still carry out the wishes that you wanted it to do. What happened 20 years ago and the people that were involved in your life might be completely different now. It's worth just having that checked every so often. Like I say, as soon as things change in your life, go and have them updated in your will. Have that plan changed as you go. And then the benefits of having this thing drafted. So your instruction and your wishes are carried out. And again, it's so important that your instructions and your wishes tie up with your plan. The plan that you've kind of built along the way need to tie up with this thing. And this is where a lot of people get it wrong. They've got this wonderful plan, but they've got this will that doesn't talk to the plan that they're doing. So I'll give you a quick example. So husband and wife with children, they've got a plan. The children eventually, they're older, they move on, and they get jobs, and they become financially dependent on themselves. Mom and dad now eventually get to retirement, and they've created a nice little nest egg for them to retire on, and that money is looking after mom and dad. In the will, it says that when dad passes away, he wants his two children to inherit X amount, and the rest then to be left to his spouse. The day comes, and the executor starts action in the will, and the will says, I want to leave my son John and my daughter Susan X amount of money. There's money, but that money was intended for the retirement and his spouse's retirement so that she could carry on enjoying her retirement. But the will says that the children need to inherit this money. So we've got two options here. Either the children need us to go, mom needs the money more than us, and so therefore it's not an issue. Or we've got to sell the home or the car to create that money to give to them. Or it's got to come out of these investments that we've got to give them that, because then there's an inheritance. The dad's instruction was, pay my children X amount. And so again, I go back to my earlier story, is that you'll have some families where the children will go, no, it's fine, mom needs that money. But you're also going to have those where, no, we're entitled to that money. It said so. Dad wanted us to get that money. And now you've got a dilemma because the plan and the will didn't speak to each other. And so it's important when we have these wishes that we must make sure that the wishes are aligned with what our plan was and where our plan is at that time. And that's why it's so important. As these circumstances change, we need to update that thing. So what should have happened at retirement when there wasn't the need to have the children inherit, or if it was going to be done, provision needed to be made in that, so that you don't have that dilemma where between the two children and the mom, they've got to try and resolve this issue and who's going to get what. It can limit your taxes. So if you've got an estate where there is value in the estate, if it's done correctly, if it's managed properly, you can cut down some of the taxes that are going to be paid on your estate. And those can be done in clever ways of just how you do it, how you instruct certain things to happen. So again, if you've got that, if it's drafted and it's been done properly, you could potentially save your family who are having to sort the other stuff out a little bit of money that they're not having to pay. And again, it's one of those funny things when we spoke about taxes last week, and I spoke about the two-pot system, how happy people are to pay that tax because they're going to get some of that money back. But on the tax that we have to pay every month on our salaries, we don't like the tax man. We hate SARS for that. And this is another one of those. When we say to people, you do realize that you're going to, your estate's going to be liable for this amount in taxes. Like, oh, it's not my problem. I'm not here anymore. Doesn't matter. So again, it's strange. We don't like to pay SARS money. We hate paying taxes. But in certain circumstances, it doesn't matter if I pay taxes that I don't need to pay because it's not my problem. It relieves the stress and the anxiety. And again, I can only speak from experience when we have families come in and this thing is done properly. Just the amount of gratitude that they have afterwards, because the stress and the anxiety and the pain of just going through all of that, if everything else is running smoothly and done correctly, you relieve them of that pressure. There's nothing worse than having to sort that stuff out as a family when it's traumatic already. And now you've got an issue that wasn't done properly. So just having this takes away the stress and the anxiety where families are having to deal with a difficult situation already. The world just helps manage that for them. So again, it's one of those things that you can do for your family after you're gone that's going to help them. And then again, it saves time. So if we go to a previous one where I spoke to you, if what happens if you die without a will, it can be solved, but the delay in getting to the end is just so much longer because the process before it lands up in the right places has to have the executor appointed. It has to go through all those processes. If you've got this, it can already start over there and start moving forward because you don't have to go through those earlier processes of establishing all these things before you can move on. And so there's a time saving. I want to, again, if you've ever been involved in these things, you'll know. If you haven't, it can take a long time. And not because there's anything wrong in the drafting of the will or anything. A simple will can take months to wind up just because of it having to go through certain stages of finalization. And so, again, if your plan isn't done correctly, you could have a family sitting in a position where there's a lot of money in the estate, but the family's got no money to survive on because the mom or the dad, whoever it was, left everything in the estate. And so now the surviving spouse, there's no money. The bank accounts have been frozen. Everything is lying in the estate waiting to be wound up. So again, your plan is so important so that you can action everything correctly based on what is going to happen from that will. And then it allows you to leave a legacy. So a lot of people support certain charities. They're involved in sort of institutions that help. It's your one way as well that if you are in that position that you can leave your legacy, that you can do something even after your death, that you can still contribute and help those sorts of places and institutions. It's your way that you can leave a mark for your children, your grandchildren. Again, if that will isn't done, none of those things can happen. There's no ways that they don't know you. And your family, for them, that money is going to be far more valuable than having over to the SPCA. But if that was your wish, you can leave the legacy. You've got control over the decisions that are made at the time of your passing. Yeah, and so we're going to end off there. So do something today that your future self is going to thank you for. It's a simple thing. It's the commitment of doing it. And I think that's always the hard part with any of this kind of stuff. It's the commitment of just making the step and just doing it. And I know it's one of those things we don't want to think about. It's a horrible thought to go, once I sign that piece of paper, it's almost an acknowledgement that I can now die. And that's the thing I think that stops a lot of people from doing it, is that it's almost, if we bury our heads in the sand, maybe it won't happen to me. And it's such a big risk in taking that sort of view on things. So if you haven't done it, if this plan of yours hasn't been mapped out for you yet, I'm going to encourage you to do it. Go and speak to somebody about it. It's such an important part of everything that you've done in your life. If you think all the work that you've put into who you are and what you've acquired, to go and mess it up because we haven't gone and made this decision, and we haven't put this world together that's going to instruct what happens next. What happens when that unfortunate day comes along and I can't speak anymore? I've got to make sure that the people that are in a position to go, I knew exactly what they wanted. It says it here, we're able to do that. No complications. I hope the 4 weeks have helped you. I hope that we're going to take on the challenge of Kobe and we're going to do things differently. That we're going to find the opportunity that Kobe sort of identified, that he was able to go, you know what, I can't keep doing it that way. This part of my financial journey needs a change. It needs a shift where I have to do it differently. And so that's my encouragement. And I hope out of these 4 weeks, you can grab one of those things. You go, no, that's the thing that I'm going to change. That's the thing I'm going to do slightly differently, so that my outcome in the end is not just that I'm better than the other person by one hot dog, but I'm 50 hot dogs more than them. I'm 20 hamburgers more than them. It mustn't just be a slight change in your journey. And I hope that the change that you're going to sort of put into place is the thing that's going to give you that wealth later. It's going to benefit you later, and you're going to go, you know what, thank goodness I was there. I took on the challenge of Kobe and I made that change, because I'm in a position now where I'm better off than I was before. So thank you for your time. For those that have joined us online, I hope again it's been beneficial. Those things, as far as I know, will be available. So if you've people that you know, maybe struggling with one or two of those things, you can direct them towards our website. It's there. If you're in a position that you can use these things, you're welcome to use. I don't know, I can put it out. So there we go. If you need to get hold of me, if you're in a position that you think these talks can benefit your businesses or your staff and you want me to come and have a chat, I'm open to those sorts of things. If there's something that can add value and can be helpful to other people, it's the same thing why I do the Raising Money Smart Kids. But if I can help somebody be in a better position, then that seed's planted, and hopefully they can pass on the message, and it just helps other people. And so, yeah, that's it. That's my way of making you rich. Sorry. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Thank you.